Believe in yourself, my dear. You can do it. And I know that sounds like such a simple sentence, perhaps even too simple, especially if you have spent many years not believing it. But let us not rush past it. Let us sit with it for a moment. You can do it. Not because you already know everything, not because you will never be afraid, not because you will never make a mistake. You can do it because you are capable of learning. You are capable of beginning again. You are capable of changing the way you speak to yourself until the mind slowly begins to believe a kinder truth. So many people think they are lacking ability, when what they are really lacking is a belief that has been practiced long enough. They say, I am not talented, I am not disciplined, I am not confident, I am not the kind of person who succeeds. But often, darling, these are not facts. They are old recordings. They are sentences the mind has heard, repeated, rehearsed, and protected for so long that they begin to feel like identity. And if a thought has been practiced for years, of course it will feel familiar. Familiar does not mean true. It only means familiar. Confidence is not always something you feel before you begin. Many people wait and wait for confidence to arrive, as if one morning they will wake up and suddenly feel ready, brave, powerful, clear, and certain. But very often confidence comes after you begin. It comes after one small promise kept, after one little action taken, after one moment of not running away, after one attempt that was not perfect, but was real. Confidence is a memory the body begins to collect. I did that. I survived that. I learned from that. I tried again. I did not abandon myself this time. So if you do not feel confident today, please do not make that a reason to stop. You can begin without confidence. You can begin with trembling hands. You can begin with a little doubt sitting beside you. You can begin with the old voice saying, what if this does not work? And you can answer, then I will learn. You do not need the fear to disappear before you take one loving step. Sometimes the step itself teaches the fear that it no longer has to lead. You might say softly, I do not wait for confidence. I build it one loving step at a time. Say it gently, not like a command, like a warm hand on your own shoulder, one loving step at a time. That is how a mind changes. Not by attacking the old belief, but by offering the mind a new experience often enough that it begins to loosen its grip on the old one. Now, there is something very tender here. When you try to change, you may feel as if one part of you wants to move forward and another part keeps pulling you back. And sometimes people become angry with that part. They say, why do I keep sabotaging myself? Why am I like this? Why can't I just do it? But what if the part pulling you back is not trying to destroy your future? What if it is the old version of you trying to protect you from pain? Perhaps there is a younger part of you who was criticized, a part who tried before and failed, a part who was laughed at, compared, rejected, abandoned, or made to feel small. That part may hear your new dream and panic. It may say, do not try. If you try, you may fail again. Do not stand out. If people see you, they may judge you. Do not believe in yourself too much. If you hope, you may be disappointed. It is not wisdom speaking there. It is old protection. It is fear dressed as caution. And yet, even that fear deserves compassion. Do not hate the old version of you. She got you here. Perhaps she survived by staying small. Perhaps she survived by pleasing people. Perhaps she survived by not trying too hard, so failure would not hurt as much. Perhaps she survived by expecting disappointment, so she would not be surprised by it. These patterns may no longer serve you, but they once tried to protect you. So we do not shame them. We thank them, and then we lead them differently. You can place a hand on your heart and say to that older fear, I know you are trying to keep me safe. Thank you. But we are not in the same place anymore. I am older now. I can learn. I can ask for help. I can make mistakes and still love myself. You do not have to decide the whole future for me. Feel how gentle that is. You are not fighting yourself. You are becoming the loving adult inside your own life. You might say, I honor the old version of me, but I no longer let it decide my future. That is not rejection. It is leadership. It is saying, come with me, little one. We are going to do this differently now. We are not going to live forever inside the old fear. And then we must begin to notice the old script. Everyone has an inner script. It is the private story the mind repeats about who you are and what is possible for you. Sometimes it is so familiar that you do not even hear it as a story. You hear it as truth. I always quit. I am not good with money. I am not smart enough. I am unlucky. I am not chosen. I am not consistent. I cannot do hard things. I am not the successful type. These sentences may feel heavy because they have been repeated, but they are not the final truth of your soul. An old story often begins in a wound. Maybe someone said something when you were young. Maybe you failed once and decided it meant you were a failure. Maybe you compared yourself to someone and concluded you were behind. Maybe you were praised only when you performed, and now you fear trying unless you can guarantee success. The mind takes experiences and turns them into identity, but you can take awareness and turn it back into freedom. A beautiful practice is to write down 5 sentences you often think about yourself. Do not make them pretty. Be honest. I am not disciplined. I never finish. I am afraid to be seen. I am not good enough. I always fall behind. Then beside each sentence ask, is this an absolute truth or is this an old wound repeating itself? Be very gentle here. You are not cross-examining yourself. You are opening the window. Then rewrite each sentence in a way the body can believe. Not too far, not too forced. I am learning discipline through small promises. I can finish one small thing at a time. I am becoming safer with being seen. I am enough while I grow. I can begin again today. These softer sentences are powerful because they do not make the mind jump too far. They give the mind a bridge. You might hold this close. I am not the old story my mind has repeated. You are not the sentence that fear wrote about you. You are not the failure that once hurt you. You are not the criticism someone else placed on your spirit. You are a living being, changing, learning, healing, and becoming. And every time you choose one new thought, one new action, one new response, you are teaching the mind, there is another way to be me. So today, do not demand that you believe in yourself perfectly. Begin more kindly than that. Notice one old story. Comfort one frightened part of you. Take one loving step. Keep one small promise. And when the mind says, you cannot, do not fight it with anger. Smile gently and say, I understand why you think that, but we are learning something new now. This is how the mind changes. This is how belief is built. This is how little by little you become the person who finally says, not from pretending, but from experience, I can. This is very interesting, my dear, because the old mind usually wants proof before it believes. It says, show me the result first, and then I will trust. Show me that I can succeed, and then I will begin. Show me that I will not be rejected, and then I will speak. Show me that I will be safe, and then I will move. But life often does not work that way. Very often we must give the mind a loving direction before the proof appears. We must say, perhaps I can. Perhaps this time can be different. Perhaps life is opening a door I cannot see yet. Not as a way of lying to ourselves, but as a way of giving the mind a new road to walk. I like to call this a kind of loving inner compass, a positive illusion, if you want to use that phrase, but not the kind that makes you foolish or blind. It is not pretending that everything is easy when it is not. It is not pretending that you have no fear when you do. It is not saying, I am already perfect, so I never need to learn. No, that is not healing. What I mean is a gentle experimental belief, a belief that says, what if I am more capable than the old story says? What if the past does not have to repeat itself? What if I can learn this slowly? What if I am allowed to try before I feel completely ready? This kind of question opens a window. The old mind believes what it has already seen. That is why it can be so difficult to change. If you have seen yourself give up in the past, the old mind says, we give up. If you have been criticized, the old mind says, being seen is dangerous. If you tried and failed once, the old mind says, do not try again. It is trying to protect you with the evidence it knows, but the future cannot be built only from old evidence. If you only believe what has already happened, you will keep recreating what has already happened. To grow, you must offer the mind a possibility before the new evidence is fully visible. This is where the sentence, what if, becomes very powerful, not what if everything goes wrong. The fearful mind already knows how to ask that. Let us ask more loving questions. What if I can begin small? What if I do not need to be perfect to be loved? What if 1 year from now I will be grateful I started today? What if the skill I am afraid of can become natural with practice? What if this door is opening in a way I do not yet understand? These questions do not force certainty. They invite movement. They give the brain a direction. And once the mind has a direction, it begins to look for evidence. The mind is always searching for proof of something. If your inner script says, I cannot do this, the mind will collect every hesitation as evidence. If your new direction says, I am learning to do this, the mind may begin to notice each small attempt, the first 5 minutes, the first page, the first message, the first time you did not quit, the first time you spoke even though your voice shook, the first time you did not run back to the old pattern. The evidence was always small at the beginning, but small evidence, repeated lovingly, becomes a new identity. You might say, I give my mind a loving direction before the proof appears. Let that sentence be very gentle. It does not mean, I must believe perfectly now. It means, I am willing to guide my mind toward a kinder possibility. Sometimes the mind needs a bridge. If I am successful feels too far away, say, I am learning to succeed in small, steady ways. If I am confident feels impossible, say, I am becoming safer with trying. If I can do anything feels too big, say, I can do the next small thing. Why, this is not weaker. It is wiser. A bridge gets you across. And please remember, a loving assumption can be a medicine. For so long, many people have assumed the worst about themselves. They assume they will fail. They assume they are not chosen. They assume they are behind. They assume they are too late. They assume other people are better. They assume life has forgotten them. If you have been assuming pain for years, why not practice assuming support? Why not assume that you are learning? Why not assume that one small step matters? Why not assume that your future is not finished being written? These assumptions are not childish. They are seeds. Now let us go deeper, because believing in yourself is often misunderstood. Many people think self-belief means, I am certain I will win. I am certain this will work. I am certain the outcome will be exactly what I want. But that is not the deepest kind of belief. That is still a form of control. The deeper belief is not, I will control every result. The deeper belief is, whatever happens, I will not abandon myself. That is a much stronger foundation. It is also much kinder. Because if your belief depends only on winning, what happens when something does not go the way you hoped? Do you turn against yourself? Do you say, see, I am nothing? Do you collapse into shame? Do you make one result into your entire identity? That is not self-belief. That is self-worth attached to an outcome. True self-trust says, if I succeed, I will receive it with gratitude. If I make a mistake, I will learn. If I move slowly, I will keep going. If I fail, I will not use failure as a weapon against my soul. This is unconditional belief. It is not unconditional certainty about the outcome. It is unconditional loyalty to yourself. Let that touch you for a moment. What would change if you knew you would not abandon yourself? You might try more freely. You might speak more honestly. You might start the project before it is perfect. You might apply for the opportunity without making rejection mean you are unworthy. You might allow yourself to learn in public. You might stop needing every step to guarantee success before you take it. The fear of failure becomes less terrifying when failure is no longer followed by self-attack. Many of us were taught to be with ourselves only when we are doing well. We praise ourselves when we achieve. We approve of ourselves when others approve. We feel loving toward ourselves when we are productive, attractive, disciplined, wanted, successful, calm. But the moment we struggle, the old voice appears. You are useless. You always do this. You should be better by now. Why can't you be like other people? And then the difficult moment becomes twice as painful. The original disappointment and the punishment we add on top of it. So now we learn a new way. We become the one who stays. If you make a mistake, you say, all right, my dear, what did we learn? If you are slow, you say, we are still moving. If you are afraid, you say, fear can come with us, but it will not drive. If you fall back into an old pattern, you say, we noticed it. That means awareness is growing. This is not making excuses. This is refusing to turn growth into violence. You can hold yourself accountable without being cruel. In fact, loving accountability works much better because the nervous system does not have to defend itself against shame. You might say, I believe in myself because I will not abandon myself. This is a beautiful sentence. It gives the body safety. It tells the past version of you, you do not have to be perfect to be loved by me. It tells the future version of you, I will keep walking toward you. It tells the present version of you, you are allowed to begin from here. The mind begins to trust you when it sees that you do not disappear during difficulty. And this brings us to action because belief cannot live only in words. The subconscious mind listens to what you say, yes, but it also watches what you do repeatedly. If you say, I trust myself, but you never keep even a tiny promise to yourself, the subconscious becomes confused. If you say, I am becoming disciplined, but every day you abandon the smallest action, the old story remains strong. This is not to make you feel guilty. It is to show you where your power is. Every small action can become evidence, and evidence is what the mind uses to update its beliefs. If you write one page, the mind receives the message, I am someone who begins. If you walk for 10 minutes, the body receives the message, I am someone who cares for myself. If you send the email, the nervous system learns, I can move even when I am nervous. If you finish one small task, the subconscious hears, I keep promises. If you pause before reacting, the inner child sees, I am becoming safe with myself. These actions may look tiny to the outside world, but inside, they are changing the story. Do not underestimate small proof. The old mind loves dramatic proof. It wants the big transformation, the perfect routine, the sudden success, the complete reinvention. But the subconscious is often more deeply changed by repetition than drama. One inspired day is lovely, but one small action repeated many times becomes identity. The mind says, oh, we do this now. The body says, this is becoming familiar. The self says, perhaps I can trust me. That is how change becomes natural. When you are rebuilding belief, make the action so small that the frightened part of you does not have to panic. If you want to write, write one paragraph. If you want to exercise, stretch for 3 minutes. If you want to build confidence, say one honest sentence. If you want to clean your life, clear one corner. If you want to heal money fear, look at one number calmly. If you want to stop hiding, take one tiny visible step. Small actions are not small when they are teaching the mind a new identity. You may think, but this is not enough. And I would say, enough for what? Enough to impress the ego? Maybe not. Enough to begin changing the subconscious? Yes. The seed is not the whole tree, but it is not nothing. A baby step is not the whole journey, but it is not failure. A 5-minute action is not the dream completed, but it is the dream being honored. Be very careful not to dismiss the very evidence you are trying to build. If you keep telling yourself small actions do not count, the mind has no way to collect new proof. Let the little things count. They are the language of trust. You might say, every small action becomes evidence that I can. And then ask, what evidence can I create today? Not tomorrow, not when I feel confident, not when conditions are perfect. Today, one small proof, one honest action, one loving step. You are not trying to convince the whole world. You are teaching your own mind. That is enough. There is also a beautiful thing that happens when you act consistently. Fear stops being the only authority. At first, fear may be loud. It may say, do not do it. You are not ready. What if people judge? But when you take action anyway, gently, repeatedly, fear begins to lose its throne. It may still speak, but now there is evidence beside it. Fear says, you cannot. Evidence says, I began yesterday. Fear says, you will quit. Evidence says, I returned today. Fear says, you are not the kind of person who follows through. Evidence says, I kept a small promise. This is how the inner courtroom changes. You stop arguing with fear using only words. You bring proof, and the proof does not need to be perfect. Please hear that. In fact, imperfect proof is often the most healing kind. When you act imperfectly and survive, the mind learns that imperfection is not death. When you try and receive feedback, The mind learns that feedback is not destruction. When you begin clumsily and keep going, the mind learns that awkwardness is part of learning. This is how confidence becomes grounded. It is no longer a fantasy of never making mistakes. It becomes a lived memory of continuing after mistakes. The past version of you may still be afraid. Bring her with you. Do not say, "You must disappear before I begin." Say, "You can sit beside me while I take this step." The old fear may tremble while you send the email. It may whisper while you write the page. It may tighten the stomach while you speak. That is all right. You are not waiting for the old fear to approve. You are showing it a new experience. See, we did it. We are still safe. We can try again. This is reparenting through action. Sometimes the mind changes quietly. There may not be a dramatic moment when you suddenly feel transformed. One day you simply notice you did the thing without so much resistance. You spoke with a little more ease. You began a little faster. You recovered from a mistake sooner. You did not need as much approval. You did not collapse after one difficult moment. That is belief growing. That is your mind finally beginning to believe, not because you forced it, but because you gave it repeated evidence. So today, choose a loving direction before the proof appears. Hold an assumption that supports growth. What if I can learn? What if I can begin? What if life is helping me become ready through the doing? Then give yourself unconditional loyalty. Whatever happens, I will not abandon myself. And then create one piece of proof, one action, one promise, one step. Let these three work together: direction, loyalty, evidence. This is how I changed my mind until I finally believed I could. Not by waiting for certainty, not by demanding perfect confidence, not by hating the old fearful self, but by guiding the mind toward a kinder possibility, staying with myself through the outcome, and building proof in small, faithful ways. Little by little, the old story becomes less believable. Little by little, the new evidence becomes stronger. Little by little, the sentence "I can" stops feeling like a fantasy and begins to feel like home. And perhaps, my dear, that is the most beautiful change of all. Not that you never feel fear, but that fear no longer has the final word. Your old story does not have the final word. Other people's criticism does not have the final word. One past failure does not have the final word. The final word begins to come from the loving, steady part of you that says, "I am learning. I am staying with myself. I am creating evidence. I can." And once you begin creating these small pieces of evidence, there is another lesson that becomes very important. You must learn to love the step, not only the result. This can sound so simple, but it is one of the places where many people lose their peace. They begin something good, something honest, something that could truly change their lives, and almost immediately the mind runs ahead. When will it work? When will I be seen? When will they approve? When will the money come? When will I feel different? When will I know this was worth it? And before the new seed has even had time to root, the mind is already digging it up to check whether it has become a tree. My dear, this is such a human habit. We want proof quickly because proof feels safe. We want the result to come fast so the old fear can finally relax. But if you grip the result too tightly, the whole process becomes tense. The thing you once wanted from love becomes another place where you punish yourself. You write one page, and instead of saying, "I began," you say, "This is not enough." You practice one skill, And instead of feeling proud that you practiced, you say, I am still far behind. You take one brave step, and the mind says, but where is the big result? And then the heart begins to feel tired before the journey has truly started. There is a very great kindness in returning to the step. The step is where your power lives. The result is something you influence, nourish, prepare for, and welcome, but you cannot hold it by the throat and demand that it ripen before its time. A flower does not open because we stand over it saying, hurry, hurry, prove that I planted you correctly. It opens because the conditions are tended: light, water, soil, time. Your life is much the same. The action is your watering. The devotion is your sunlight. The patience is your soil. The result is the blooming that comes when enough things have been cared for consistently. Detachment from the result does not mean you do not care. It does not mean you stop dreaming. It does not mean you become passive or vague. It means you stop turning the outcome into the judge of your worth. You do your part today. You honor the process. You let life arrange what you cannot see yet. You allow timing to have wisdom. You let the result mature instead of constantly squeezing it with fear. There is such a difference between planting with love and planting with panic. When you are too attached to the result, every delay becomes personal. If the opportunity has not come yet, the mind says, I am not good enough. If the healing is slow, the mind says, nothing is working. If people do not notice immediately, the mind says, I must not matter. But when you return to the step, you begin to measure something deeper. Did I show up today? Did I practice? Did I speak more kindly to myself? Did I take one honest action? Did I return after doubt? These are better questions. They build self-trust instead of fear. You might say softly, I focus on the step and I let life handle the unfolding. Let that sentence breathe. The step is yours. The unfolding belongs to life. This does not mean you do nothing. It means you do the thing that is actually yours to do. Today's paragraph, today's walk, today's email, today's boundary, today's practice, today's study, today's kind sentence to yourself. The future is not built by staring at it anxiously. It is built by loving the next step enough to take it. Sometimes the step may seem so small that the ego is embarrassed. The ego wants to say, this is not impressive. But healing is not always impressive from the outside. It is intimate. It is quiet. It is the private moment when you do not quit. It is the morning you begin again without announcing it. It is the evening you forgive yourself instead of attacking yourself. It is the moment you say, I am still here. Do not despise these little moments. They are the threads that weave a new mind. And as you practice focusing on the step, you will discover something else. Belief and fear can exist at the same time. Please do not wait until fear disappears before you begin. If you wait for a perfect feeling of confidence, you may wait a very long time. The old nervous system may not give you permission before the first step. It may tremble. It may say, what if this goes wrong? It may bring up every memory of failure, rejection, embarrassment, disappointment. And still, you can move gently. People often think, if I were truly meant to do this, I would not be afraid. But that is not always true. Sometimes fear appears precisely because you are stepping beyond the familiar. The old self knows the old room, even if the old room is small. It knows the old excuses. It knows the old limits. It knows the old identity. When you reach for something wider, the old self may feel exposed. Fear may come not because you are wrong, but because you are growing. You can be afraid and still believe. You can feel your hands shake and still send the message. You can feel unsure and still begin the class. You can feel nervous and still speak the truth. You can feel doubt and still write the page. You can feel resistance and still take the walk. This is not hypocrisy. This is courage. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision not to let fear be the only voice you obey. Think of a small child learning to walk. The child is not confident in the way an adult understands confidence. The child wobbles, falls, tries again, holds onto furniture, cries sometimes, laughs sometimes. But no one says, "You are not ready to walk because you are unsteady." The unsteadiness is part of learning. Why do we become so cruel to ourselves as adults? Why do we demand perfect confidence before we allow ourselves to begin? We are still allowed to learn. We are still allowed to wobble. So if fear comes, do not turn it into a stop sign immediately. Ask it gently. Are you warning me of real danger, or are you simply reminding me that this is new? If it is real danger, listen and protect yourself. If it is newness, breathe and take a smaller step. Fear often relaxes when the step becomes small enough. Not, "I must change my whole life today," but "I can do 5 minutes." Not, "I must become brilliant overnight," but "I can practice one skill." Not, "I must know exactly how everything will unfold," but "I can do what is clear today." You may hold this thought. I can feel fear and still choose to believe I can. This is a very loving sentence because it does not shame the fear. It does not say, "Fear, disappear." It says, "Fear may be here and I can still choose a direction." The frightened part of you does not have to be thrown away. It can come with you, but it does not get to drive the car. You are becoming the loving adult who says, "I know you are scared. Sit beside me. We are going to take one step together." And every time you do that, you create a new kind of proof. The proof is not only that you succeeded. The proof is that you did not let fear own you. The proof is that you acted while human. The proof is that you stayed with yourself. This is so important. Sometimes we define proof too narrowly. We think proof means only the big result, but there is proof in beginning, proof in returning, proof in asking for help, proof in trying again, proof in being kinder than you used to be, proof in resting before you break, proof in continuing after a day that did not go well. Now we come to something very tender, thanking yourself. Many people do not know how to do this. They know how to criticize themselves immediately. They know how to notice what is missing. They know how to say, "Not enough." They complete 70% of something and attack themselves for the 30% that is unfinished. They improve a little and say, "This is nothing." They keep going through a hard season and say, "I should be doing more." And then they wonder why the heart has no desire to try again. Why would the inner child want to keep trying if every effort is met with criticism? Self-trust grows in an atmosphere of recognition. When you thank yourself, you are not becoming arrogant. You are becoming fair. You are finally seeing your effort. You are saying to the inner self, "I noticed that you tried." And that matters. The subconscious loves acknowledgement. It says, "Oh, my effort counts here. My small steps are seen here. I do not have to be perfect to be appreciated." This makes the mind safer to try again. So begin very simply. At the end of the day, instead of only asking, "What did I fail to do?" ask, "Where did I show up?" Perhaps you tried. Thank yourself. Perhaps you did not quit. Thank yourself. Perhaps you returned after a difficult morning. Thank yourself. Perhaps you took one action even though you felt afraid. Thank yourself. Perhaps you rested instead of pushing until collapse. Thank yourself. Perhaps you noticed an old pattern before it swallowed you completely. Thank yourself. These little recognitions are not small. They are how self-trust is fed. You might say, "Thank you for trying." Feel that. Many parts of you have tried for years without being thanked. Thank you for not giving up. Thank you for coming back after a messy day. Thank you for learning something new. Thank you for being willing. Thank you for taking one step. There is something deeply healing about becoming the person who notices your own effort. You stop waiting for the whole world to clap before you allow yourself to feel proud. And yes, you can thank yourself even when the result is not perfect, especially then. If you only thank yourself when everything is successful, then love is still conditional. But when you thank yourself for honest effort, you begin to build a steadier relationship with yourself. I am proud of you for beginning. I am proud of you for trying again. I am proud of you for being honest. I am proud of you for choosing the next step instead of the old story. This is how confidence grows softer and stronger. Softer because it is no longer built on self-attack. Stronger because it is based on lived evidence. You may say, "I thank myself for every step, and my confidence grows softer and stronger." Let that be a nightly practice, not a performance, not a journal entry that must be perfect, just a moment of recognition. Place a hand on your heart and ask, "What can I thank myself for today?" Even on a difficult day, there will be something. I survived today. I breathed through today. I noticed my fear. I did not say the cruel thing to myself as quickly. I came back. Sometimes that is enough. There is a beautiful cycle here. You focus on the step so the mind stops being tortured by the result. You allow fear to come with you, so you stop waiting for perfect confidence. You thank yourself for the effort, so the inner self feels safe to keep trying. Step, courage, recognition, step, courage, recognition. This becomes a new way of living. The mind no longer has to be forced. It begins to participate because it feels safer. And one day, you may realize that belief has grown quietly inside you, not because someone convinced you, not because the result came instantly, not because fear vanished, but because you showed up for yourself so many times that the old story could no longer remain the only evidence. You have steps now. You have proof now. You have memories of returning now. You have a relationship with yourself that did not exist before. So today, loosen your grip on the outcome just a little. Ask, what step is mine? Let life handle the unfolding. Let time do its quiet work. Let the seed grow beneath the soil without digging it up each morning. And if fear walks beside you, do not panic. Say, you may come, but you may not lead. Then take the step. And tonight, before sleep, thank yourself. Thank the part of you that tried. Thank the part that returned. Thank the part that is learning to believe. This is how the sentence "I can" becomes real. Not by shouting it over fear, but by living it gently beside fear. Not by controlling every result, but by honoring every step. Not by waiting to become perfect, but by appreciating the brave, imperfect human being who keeps choosing to begin again. And as you begin to believe in yourself, there is one thing I want you to remember very deeply. You are not here by accident. You did not arrive in this life as a meaningless little mistake that now has to copy everyone else in order to become valuable. You have a nature, a rhythm, a sensitivity, a way of learning, a way of seeing, a way of loving, a way of creating, a way of shining that may not look like someone else's way at all. And so much pain begins when we stop respecting our own nature and begin trying to become a copy of another person. Perhaps you have spent years thinking, I should be faster. I should be louder. I should learn like they learn. I should work like they work. I should want what they want. I should be more confident in the way they are confident. And every time you say this, the soul becomes a little tired, because your soul did not come here to live as an imitation. It came here to unfold as itself. This does not mean you never grow. Of course you grow. But growth does not mean rejecting your nature. Growth means nurturing it. To respect your nature is to stop apologizing for the way life made you. If you are sensitive, perhaps sensitivity is not your weakness. Perhaps it is part of your intelligence. If you are quiet, perhaps quietness is not failure. Perhaps it is where your depth grows. If you learn slowly but deeply, perhaps you are not behind. Perhaps you are building roots. If you are creative, intuitive, emotional, thoughtful, analytical, visual, relational, spiritual, practical, or deeply observant, there is a place for that. The problem is not your difference. The pain comes when you call your difference a defect. You may say softly, I respect my nature and stop apologizing for being myself. Let that sentence become a release. You do not have to become someone else before you are allowed to trust yourself. You begin by honoring the life that is already moving through you. And then, my dear, know your nature. Not everyone is intelligent in the same way. Some people are gifted with language. They can take feeling and turn it into words. Some people understand emotions quickly. They feel the temperature of a room before anyone speaks. Some people think in images. They see colors, shapes, possibilities, designs, stories. Some people love systems. They know how to organize, structure, build, solve, make things work. Some people connect beautifully with others. They can encourage, lead, listen, comfort, persuade, gather. Some people have strong intuition. They sense timing, energy, direction, truth. If you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will spend its whole life thinking it is stupid. And many people have done this to themselves. They have measured their intelligence by someone else's gift. They have called themselves slow because they were not quick in one area, while ignoring the area where they are naturally wise. They have called themselves untalented because their gift did not look impressive in the environment they were in. So now we begin again. We ask better questions. Ask yourself, how do I learn most naturally? Do I learn by reading, listening, watching, practicing, teaching, feeling, repeating, drawing, speaking, organizing? Ask them, where do I solve problems well? Ask, well, what do people often come to me for? Advice, comfort, ideas, beauty, structure, energy, humor, clarity? Ask, what gives me natural energy? Not what looks impressive. What makes something in you wake up? These questions are little lamps. They help you see yourself more kindly. You may say, I know my nature, and I honor the unique intelligence within me. When you understand how you are intelligent, you stop using the wrong ruler to measure your life. You stop saying, I am not good, and begin saying, I am learning where my goodness lives. But knowing your nature is not the end. You must nurture it. A seed has a nature, yes. A rose seed is not trying to become an oak tree, but even a rose seed needs soil, water, light, protection, time. Your gifts are the same. Talent is not a reason to do nothing. Sensitivity is not a reason to stay untrained. Intuition needs listening. Creativity needs practice. Confidence needs evidence. Wisdom needs experience. Your nature is the beginning, not the finished garden. So nurture your nature every day in small ways. Learn something. Practice one skill. Place yourself in environments that make the best part of you easier to access. Do work that creates real value. Share what you know. Use your gifts to help someone, even in a small way. The self is not found only by thinking about the self. You find yourself by living, trying, making mistakes, adjusting, serving, creating, listening, and beginning again. You discover your path by walking with your own feet. You may say, I nurture my nature and my life begins to bloom. Feel how gentle that is. You are not forcing the flower open. You are giving it what it needs to open in its own timing. And now we must speak about the voice you use with yourself, because self-talk is the weather inside your mind. If every day the inner voice says, you are stupid, you failed again, you never do anything right, then the mind begins to contract. The body loses energy. The inner child hides. Even your talents may become afraid to come forward because they know they will be criticized before they are allowed to grow. A cruel inner voice does not create true strength. It creates tension, shame, and fear. But a loving inner voice gives the mind room to rise. I am learning. I can try again. I do not need to be perfect to begin. I made a mistake and I can learn from it. I am proud of myself for showing up. These sentences are not weak. They are healing instructions. They teach the nervous system that growth is safe. They teach the subconscious that effort will be met with kindness, not attack. And when effort is met with kindness, it becomes easier to try again. You may say, I speak to myself in a way that helps me rise. And perhaps today, before you criticize yourself, pause and ask, would I speak this way to someone I love? If not, change the sentence. Make it honest but kind. You do not need to lie to yourself. You can say, this needs improvement without saying, I am worthless. You can say, I forgot today, without saying, I always fail. You can say, I am beginning again, without creating drama around the mistake. Your environment also speaks to your mind all day. Sometimes we try to build belief in places that constantly drain belief. We listen to people who criticize, compare, and doubt us. We consume content that makes us feel behind, unattractive, untalented, or not enough. We live in spaces filled with clutter, old energy, and reminders of versions of ourselves we are trying to leave. And then we wonder why it is hard to believe in a new life. The mind is being programmed by everything it repeatedly touches. So choose your environment with love. Reduce contact with what makes you forget your power. Not always dramatically, sometimes quietly. Less comparison, less noise, less conversation that leaves you smaller, less content that makes you hate your life. Then increase contact with what reminds you of who you are becoming. Books that strengthen you, voices that calm you, people who believe growth is possible. A clean corner of your room, a morning sound that lifts your spirit, a notebook where you can meet your own truth. Little changes in the environment can make a new identity easier to live. You may say, I choose an environment that reminds me of who I am becoming. This is not about controlling everything. It is about giving your new self a place to breathe. And now let us bring it into a very simple 5-step practice. First, identify the old story. Write it down plainly. I cannot because I have never. Do not be afraid to see it. Awareness is not punishment. It is the beginning of freedom. Second, comfort the past version of you. Say, "Thank you for trying to protect me. I know you were afraid, but now I am choosing a new direction." This softens the inner resistance. Third, create a test belief. Not a forced belief, but a bridge. Maybe I can do this little by little. Maybe I do not need to be perfect to begin. Maybe I can learn. Maybe this time I can stay with myself. Fourth, take one small action to create proof. 5 minutes, 1 page, 1 call, 1 message, 1 step, 1 promise kept. Do not make it grand. Make it real. And fifth, thank yourself. Thank you for trying. Thank you for coming back. Thank you for not abandoning yourself. This is how the mind begins to believe you. Changing your mind until you finally believe you can is not a single moment. It is a relationship. You respect your nature. You learn your nature. You nurture your nature. You speak to yourself with love. You choose an environment that supports the new story. And you practice step by step until the old sentence, "I cannot," begins to lose its authority, and a new sentence rises from lived experience. I can learn. I can grow. I can begin. I can.